Hello friends, it's been a while since I posted my last video from my series This Week in Trek. I was hoping I will have tons of new things for you all, but CBS is pretty slow with updates. But we do have some news from the world of Star Trek Discovery, and some news is better than no news. The first news for today is purely technical. If you do care about technical data, you probably know that all Star Trek movies and TV shows between 1966 and 2004 were filmed on good old-fashioned 35mm film. That changed for the final season of Star Trek Enterprise, and it wasn't an artistic decision but a financial decision. They switched from film to digital. And I personally hate the artificial digital look of the fourth season. The movement simply seems to me way too smooth, way too, for a lack of a better word, real. The original Star Trek was shot on 35mm Eastman film, and the aspect ratio was 4:3, or if you want to 1.33. The remastered editions with CGI effects, however, aired in Japan in 1.78 aspect ratio, or 16:9. The animated Star Trek was done on 35mm film, again in 4:3 aspect ratio. Star Trek The Motion Picture was shot on 35mm Eastman film, and it was presented in 2.35 widescreen aspect ratio. Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan was shot again on 35mm film, but on a different film stock, Fuji, which gives the movie a distinct look. Together with the 35mm prints, also 70mm prints were produced. The aspect ratio was 2.2 for the 70mm prints and 2.35 for the more common 35mm prints. Star Trek III The Search for Spock again used the 35mm film, and they returned to Eastman. Just like the previous movies, Star Trek III also was released on 70mm. The aspect ratio was 2.35 for 35mm prints and 2.2 for 70mm prints. Star Trek IV The Voyage Home had the same technical specifications as Star Trek III. The same goes for Star Trek V. Star Trek VI was shot on 35mm Eastman film, and the aspect ratio was 2.2 for 70mm blow-ups and 2.35 for 35mm prints. The DVD release, however, actually changed the aspect ratio to 2 thanks to the Super 35 format. Now back to TV shows. Star Trek The Next Generation was also shot on 35mm Eastman film, and the aspect ratio was again 4:3, or 1.33. Star Trek Deep Space Nine was shot again on 35mm Eastman film, and the aspect ratio of the episodes was 4:3, or 1.33. Star Trek Voyager was shot, what a surprise, on 35mm film, and the aspect ratio of the episodes was 4:3, or 1.33. Back to the movies. Star Trek Generations was again shot on 35mm film in 2.35 aspect ratio. Star Trek First Contact was shot on 35mm Eastman in 2.35 aspect ratio. Star Trek Insurrection used two different 35mm film stocks, Eastman and Kodak, and the aspect ratio was 2.35. Star Trek Nemesis has a significantly different look, probably because it was shot on a 35mm Kodak stock, and to be honest, it looks worst of all of the movies, even though it belongs to the newest movies. The aspect ratio was of course 2.35. So, as you can see, during the 20th century, all Star Trek releases had a relatively unified look. They were all shot on 35mm film, most of the time Eastman. The TV shows were done in a 4:3 aspect ratio, and the movies were done usually in a 2.35 aspect ratio. But the first TV show produced in the 21st century changed it. Star Trek Enterprise continued to film on 35mm film for the first 3 seasons, but they switched the aspect ratio to 16:9 or 1.78, and they changed the film stock to Kodak for some reason, and it suddenly has a different look than the previous shows, which were done usually on Eastman. For the 4th season, they changed even the technology, and for the first time ever they switched from film to digital video. Then we had a several years long gap, after which J.J. Abrams took over the franchise and produced the first reboot movie in 2009. Thankfully, he is one of the few directors who still shoots on film. At least, thankfully, for people like me who absolutely love film and hate digital. So the whole movie was shot on 35mm Kodak Vision 2. The aspect ratio was still kept at 2.35. Star Trek Into Darkness was a bit different. It was shot on a mix of 35mm film and horizontal 65mm film, both Kodak Vision 3. It was also the first movie which has had a proper release, which was again in 2.35, but also an IMAX release, and the IMAX scenes were in 1.66. Star Trek Beyond changed the director because J.J. Abrams went to direct Star Wars Episode 7, and the new director chose to switch from film to digital, and the movie again has a very digital look. The aspect ratio was 2.35 for general release, and some scenes are actually in an incredible 5.95 Barco escape format. Now, Star Trek Discovery is continuing the digital trend. Unfortunately for people like me, it will be the second Star Trek show which will be shot digitally, if we also count the final season of Star Trek Enterprise, and it will be aired in a very unusual aspect ratio of 2. I have never seen a TV show in such a strange aspect ratio, but from what I've heard, it's quite normal for the new Netflix shows. The second news is the director. If you have seen some of my last videos, I have said that it's very unfortunate that basically nobody who had any association with the previous Star Trek incarnations is on board. Now this has changed. Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker from Star Trek The Next Generation and from one episode of Star Trek Voyager, and Tom Riker from one episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and the director of Star Trek First Contact and Star Trek Insurrection and numerous episodes of different Star Trek TV shows, was hired to direct one of the episodes of the first season. We unfortunately don't know anything more specific yet, but anyway, it's great to know that somebody who actually knows Star Trek will direct, even if it would stay only with one episode. And the last information for this video is finally something visual. Entertainment Weekly released 2 photographs. The first one shows us a race which I still have a hard time calling the Klingons. On the left you can see Mary Chieffo, who plays Officer L'Rell, and on the right you can see Chris Obi, who plays T'Kuvma, the Battledeck commander. Now, the important thing is that Tekuvma is a leader of an ancient Klingon house, and his plan is to unite his people, which means that the people who were theorizing that the Klingon look is different because they are not the Klingons we used to know during the last 50 years, but a previously unseen ancient Klingons. And these people are now correct. To be honest, this makes me a bit happier. I am one of the fans who hate new redesigns, but if this new Klingon design will work for the plot, I can actually learn to accept it. The second picture shows us Captain Philippa Georgiou, played by Michelle Yeoh, and the first officer Michael Burnham, played by Sonequa Martin-Green. The photograph is a bit weird, it almost looks like Georgiou is a hologram. Anyway, we also got the information that Captain Georgiou has mentored Burnham for 7 years at the behest of Starek, whatever that means. Anyway, that's all for today, so let me know what you think about Discovery so far. We have something slightly over 2 months before we can actually see the pilot, so tell me if you're looking forward to it. I personally have very mixed feelings about this show. I desperately want this show to be great, but at the same time what I've seen so far doesn't make me very optimistic. But I hope I'm wrong and the show will be great. But let me know what you think down in the comment section. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button and feel free to watch any of the previous This Week in Trek videos or any other videos on my channel. You should see links to some playlists on the screen right now. Thanks a lot for watching. Sorry for being a bit too technical at the beginning and for my voice, which is completely dying. And see you sometimes in the future as soon as CBS releases something worth reporting on. Thank you very much again, and bye.